So, this is part two of our conversation about Charlotte's form of focusing oriented therapy. And we're going to do something now about unpacking. And Charlotte's going to share also a case example, which always makes everything so alive.
Yes, because when we spoke last time, we ended up with focusing oriented therapy or coaching, focusing oriented conversation, let's say. You can really boil it down to your pointing, which we spoke about last time. You're pointing to what's emerging from under the waterline, the iceberg with the 5% or less of our regular thinking, what we're conscious of, and then the 95% or more under that waterline of the more of who we really are that we're not conscious of, what Jean called the implicit. Some people call the unconscious, but Jean called it the implicit. So when somebody's speaking about an issue, you'll often get the implicit peeking up in the conversation. So, and we went into that last time, how you notice that, and you're listening with your own body, and you're listening to the language and the body language of the other, and then you're pointing by resonantly reflecting, and then you make that into a something. So if the person's talking about a wistful sad, then it's, oh, there's a wistful sad there. There's something about a wistful sadness. So you're making it a thing, a something that you can keep company, which is so important, and you can relate and listen to that.
And I think one of the things that makes that so important is that when the person begins to feel like this issue isn't me, but I have this issue,
Mm-hmm.
have these feelings. This is what I am up against. There's a me and an it. Then we're on our way there.
Yes, right. That there's a me keeping company with my experience. I am not my experience. Right. I have something. I have something that I'm relating to. And I love how you call it the one in there. I think maybe Jean also called it the one in there.
Yes.
It's this other level, the one in there that you're relating to with an open curiosity, because it needs some kind of interest or curiosity before it will even respond, and dialogue, just like anybody.
Mm-hmm. Just
You meet,
like anybody, right?
right? If you meet anybody, if you're not interested, then they're not going to open up.
Right, right. So
Mm.
we're calling in a somebody that we're relating to.
Yes, right. And keeping company. And then when we have our something or our someone, this aspect of ourselves, this part of ourselves or aspect that's having this experience that we're keeping company with, we then get to invite and open that.
Right. And
It's,
that's what we're going to talk about more today. I, I just have the feeling of wanting to say, I love the idea of keeping company that's in our focusing
mm,
vocabulary. But often it isn't like that. We're not just getting to keep it company. We're fighting with it. We're uh, we're dodging it. There's all kinds of other relationships, and the keeping it company. Um, we want that peacefulness, but often we don't have that for a long time.
mhm, mhm. Right, that keeping company is a whole world in itself.
Yes, right, right.
And that could be another conversation you and I have. What that because that's so important
That's
and so central. That's all of it, right?
right. That's right. And we don't need the keeping company in order to begin the next part of unpacking. We can have an angry relationship or an alienated relationship with it, and still do the unpacking, and then get a little bit more reconciled down the road.
That's true, but there has to be a little bit of interest. I mean,
Oh,
you can be tussling with a part of yourself. I mean, you know, a lot of people just want to cut their feelings off. If
right.
only I could have this surgically removed, if only I could just get rid of this.
Yes.
And understandably, people feel they're suffering and they just want to be rid of it. But you can still be in a tussle, but still be listening into what's going in on the other side. And that's the important thing about our job in helping facilitate that and make that possible.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
And as you say, there's a whole that's a whole other world to talk about how we do that, and that's very incredibly rich, um, and there's a lot of of beauty in that. I think actually, in fostering that relationship and helping another to foster that relationship, and that's has many dimensions in it. It's the relationship we're having and creating. It's a whole goes in lots of different directions.
Yeah, we'll do a video on that.
Mhm, mhm,
But
mhm.
I interrupted you, and you were about to tell us more about the unpacking process.
Mm. So I also want to mention here, when we're talking about the unpacking process as well, that you don't have to even mention the body. You know, I work with therapists and coaches who say, "How can I work with focusing?" You know, if I mention the body, my clients go, "Oh, you know,"
Uh-huh.
they either have a no reaction for could be for many reasons, or they think it's hokey, or it's they have their own thing about bodies. But
Yes.
you never have to mention body. Um, and some helpful ways of opening, inviting the client or the two of you unpacking this something together is something called shift questions.
Mm.
So if somebody is, let's say, fearful, oh, so there's something fearful there. And then you could ask, what makes that so fearful? Or what's the worst of that fearful? Or what's the crux of that fearful? Um, Even just asking, oh, so there's a fearful, what's in that? What's in that fearful?
Mm.
Right? Not even having to mention the body. I actually just had a session with somebody before we met, um, who is planning to move job. It's a big move for her. And at the beginning, she mentioned three things. She said a lot of things, but I noticed there were three main buckets. Um, one bucket was a sadness, one bucket was a fear, and then the other bucket was not knowing what she's going to do in the future. And they're all related, but it was very helpful making them those three things into some things. And then we went into each one. So what's in that? What's in that sad? And then she opened all of that up. And then what's in the fear? We opened all of that up. What's in the not knowing about the future? We opened that up. And so many strands were able to be expressed and moved forward that she was then able to come to the place of actually, I'm really excited.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And this sense of freedom that actually her new job, potential new job, there was all this freedom. And of course, there's fear in that about change. And, but there's all these possibilities for her creativity to be engaged. So it was just a really lovely process of going through the layers of unpacking that then allowed her to come very organically. There was no skipping over anything. Everything got to be included for her to then come to this place of excitement uh,
Mm.
about what she was doing.
And I can see your excitement in it even now, thinking about
Well, it's so enlivening and exciting being with somebody who's working on their leading edge
it.
and
Yes.
being able to say all that's there. And then as you express it, as she expresses it, it just very organically, the implicit intricacy that Jean talks about,
Hmm.
as the implicit intricacy emerges and expresses and carries forward, it's so engaging and enlivening and affirming to be with someone, whatever they're opening up.
Yes, whatever they're opening up, even very disturbing things.
Mm-hmm.
Opening
Mm-hmm.
up has its own life. I wanted to say also that one of the things that's so exciting about it is that we're not just unpacking something that's already there, like the old psychoanalysis, where you are unpacking what's in the unconscious, and we find this and we find this, and the therapist can anticipate with interpretation some things that are already there that are hidden. But in this view, unpacking takes on a different, a little bit of a different
Yes.
face, because it's not already there.
Right.
It is emerging, it's unfolding, but it's not already there folded up.
Mhm.
It's coming into, it's always changing and coming into life as we're finding it, as we're discovering it, we're also creating it.
Mhm. Mhm. And along those lines, could I share another case? Because cases are really interesting.
They are.
Another focusing conversation. So this was like another unpacking in that way that you're talking about it. So it's this, as Jean said, implicit is this fluid, interconnected web of everything affecting everything. And as you bring your attention to it, all these threads that are implying underneath get to move forward. And as you say, it's not that there are things underneath, it's this very fluid, organic forward movement of a whole person.
Mm.
Um, and I was speaking to another client in a similar, well, it's to do with her work, and it's to do with how she is in her life, because she she's really struggling about her own life forward direction with career. Um, and so she was trying to sort through all the layers of that for herself. And she said that she was saying how one of the dilemmas she has in life is that she puts others first. But there's a paradox in there, because she's she's putting others first and so feels invisible, but she's also putting herself in the middle. She's at the center. She's the one that's doing it and putting everybody first. And yet feels it's a paradox, because she's the one doing it and she's in the middle. So she's in the center, putting others first, but she's feeling invisible. So that's a pattern she was talking about.
Mm.
Um, and and she does that in her work too.
Mm.
And then she went on to say she knows what's valuable to her. And what's
Mm.
valuable to her in life and in work is to be collaborative,
Mhm.
to do something good and meaningful in the world, to have clear communication. That's a really important element for her, and to use her brain,
Mm.
right? So she has all the ingredients of what she knows is valuable and
Yes.
meaningful, but she doesn't know what to do with it.
Aha.
Um, and so she started with these two things: what's valuable to her, and this weird thing she does where she puts other people first but feels invisible, and she's doing it. So I just asked her, so here we have our thing to unpack.
Mm.
And so I started making it a something by saying, what's the feeling of all that, of putting others first but being at the center? and just motioned to my body. And she said, "It's floaty."
Mm,
So
yes.
so we have our something. So I asked, "What makes that floaty?"
Mm,
And she kind of checked inside. This is all part of a conversation. I'm not guiding her in. It's very fluid. I said,
uh-huh.
what makes that so floaty?" And she said that she's looking for validation from others,
Mm,
um,
mhm,
and that they then take what she's offering and then move on with their lives and don't acknowledge her.
mm, mm.
Right. But then as she was saying this, she was laughing, and that kind of laugh of recognition that you can get.
Yes.
And she said, "I guess I'm just giving and I'm not checking if it's something that they even want."
Uh-huh.
Like she said, I'm jumping to fix the problem without even checking. Then they just take it and carry on with their lives. And I end up, she said, feeling ungrounded and floaty.
Mm,
So then I asked another shift question. I said, "What does that whole thing need?"
mm,
She, again, very naturally just kind of checked in. It was a brief check in. And she laughed. She laughed again. And she said, "I just need to ask first. I have to even see if they want it. I need to pause and then
mhm,
see if they want it.
mhm,
And then I'm more conscious in what I'm doing.
mm,
And they are more intentional
mhm,
in
mhm,
accepting. And
mhm.
then we both get acknowledged."
Wow.
Mm.
I can feel the good energy in that.
And so, and she was laughing because it's so, for her, it's, "Oh yeah, it's so simple." So I reflected that. So I then went back and reflected what was meaningful to her. I
Mhm,
said, you'd said it was to do good work, to be collaborative, and to have clear communication. I mean, it was also to use her brain, but those were the three ones I reflected back. That those were her values, and that she was honoring those by stopping and checking and asking before doing anything. She was valuing her helping. She was communicating clearly, right? And she was doing something meaningful. And then I said, "How does that feel?" And she checked in again and she said, "Grounded."
mm,
And she said, "I can feel my feet and my legs, and I can feel the space that I'm occupying."
mm.
You could really see her and feel her slowing down and like,
Yes.
she
That's
was,
where the body comes in, right? That
yeah,
really embody that step. Yeah.
yes. And I, no mention of body in any of this
Yes,
conversation.
yes, yes. Well,
And,
thank you so much for that example. I think it,
well, yeah. And so she said, she said, I'm validating myself. I'm invalidating the other. I'm valuing, um, and at the end of it, she said, "I want to go and draw a map of it,
mm,
of how that works." And so it was just really cool because she also often, she talks at quite a pace, but by the end of it, I hadn't even asked her to slow down. She was very embodied and had really slowed down. So it had kind of come very naturally.
yeah. It's a wonderful example of how those shift questions can help move things forward.
Hmm.